My name is Adam Martin. I am the founder of F5 Project. I'm a 5-time felon, and I know what it feels like to be released from jail or a treatment center or detox or a homeless shelter into nothing. And so the idea was, like, could we do a better job by providing services in an F5 fashion, which was the function key on a keyboard, which was like refresh. So like every time we met someone, what would it look like if we treated them like none of that existed?
So F5 Project is a nonprofit organization. We help people who have addiction issues, homelessness, mental health, and ultimately try and give them a chance to change.
I had seen some trends happening with peer support where people with like real lived experience, they were going back to where they came from and they were helping people out of those situations. There's no better way to get over the stuff that happened to you in your past than to go and help people who are currently experiencing it.
Good morning. This is KRFF 95.9 LPFM. You're listening to One Pretty Ricky, and I am joined with Kirsten Huvenen and Adam Martin. This is the F5 Recovery Radio. Super happy that all of you are tuning in with us. It's just an amazing Wednesday that we get to spend together and get to share and talk all things recovery and all things amazing and really cool. How are you guys feeling today?
Yeah, good. Just gotta perk up here.
Oh, I love it. So if you tuned in last week we talked about some mentorship, which was mentorship, sponsorship, all the different things that kind of go along and go into recovery, which is really cool. And this week we try to find a different topic, just something to share, really give our lived experience. And before we kind of get into it, just want to obviously let everyone know that we have varying years of recovery and all the different things that we share. We're very proud to be able to talk about and be able to talk about those different things, but we're in no wise the experts. Adam might, say otherwise, but we're just, but that's where we're at. Just really be able to tell people this is our experience. This is what we think. And of course, hoping that we can give you something that you can take away and you can be like, wow, that was really deep. Because I love that Kirsten, like before we got on, she was like, people were like, wow, I really enjoyed you. And she's like, I don't know what I said.
Yeah. Now I kind of want to puke before every show. So
yeah. So this week's show, our topic, with it being Giving Hearts Day tomorrow and Valentine's Day is coming up next week, I thought, let's try to theme it around just some, love in the heart and all that. So today's topic is all about self-love and self-care, two very important things when it comes to your recovery and being able to, take care of yourself before taking care of others. So I'm interested to kind of talk about that, to kind of dive in and see. So Adam's going to be getting our Facebook Live up. So if you're tuning on the radio and you have to get to work, feel free to jump on Facebook. We'll be on Facebook Live. You can kind of see us and see how we're doing and all the things. So, yeah, so self-love and self-care, I guess obviously that's important.
What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, for me, I think that was one of the things that I've always kind of had prior to, recovery. It was always kind of this self-love wasn't there. Let me take that back. Self-care was always there. It was always, I think that was something maybe for my dad, maybe my mom. I don't know who kind of just instilled that, but it was always like, take care of yourself, take care of your body, drink a lot of water, do all the things. And so that kind of was so ingrained that even in active addiction, it was always like, okay, I'm going to go to the salon and get my nails done. Okay, I'm going to go and get my hair cut. I'm going to go play video games. That was always, something really big. Like Nintendo was like always like my like kind of self-care
like
type
Duck
thing.
Hunt?
Yeah. I remember we got our first like Super Nintendo. We had like Super Mario World, and me and my dad would stay up late, and my mom didn't like it, but we'd stay up late and like play video games. And so like all of those things were just so much a part of, I feel like, who I was. And so when I, fell into addiction, if you will, it was always kind of like that's just something I want to continue to keep going and kind of keep doing.
So did all of that fall to the wayside when you were betting your life away?
I think it was definitely something I did more, or I did less of, because I was like, okay, a lot of the things that, I did with self-care was, all cost money. There's obviously ways to like, have self-care and, without it, but it was really difficult to be able to spend money on like, my haircuts and other things when it's like, man, at this $25 I'm spending on this haircut could easily be a round of blackjack, or could easily be, just a bin of pull tabs or something. So it was kind of hard to like just still keep doing it when it's like, man, I could really use this money for something quote unquote better. Right?
Yeah.
Like food.
Yeah, like food. That's pretty.
Eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Right
I know.
now, eggs.
Yeah, eggs right now. So what about for you? Like anything that's you kind of
my parents are amazing, and they would breathe for me if they could, for sure. But they definitely worked so hard, and I don't know that if like, getting massages, nothing like that was modeled.
Sure.
Just didn't do that then.
Mm-hmm.
But spending time together was, and I don't know. My dad did a lot of like lessons when he'd butcher something, it was like that was our time together. But I think that all of that obviously falls to the wayside when you're in active addiction. And then in my recovery, it just looks a little bit different. Like initially when I think self-care, I think, oh, spa, blah, but that's kind of that's kind of a high-class, bougie relaxation. You know what I mean? I'm sure when Adam was walking barefoot in corduroys for 10 miles, or you were on the front page of the paper, you weren't thinking spa, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But once you kind of make peace with like, okay, I have this addiction. It's part of who I am. Then your self-care changes a little bit.
Right.
I think if my goal with self-care is to feel calmer and more at ease at the end of the day, then it can't be, I can't be Netflix and self-pity. It can't be like, I just need more time alone. And I would say like, well, I'm an introvert, so I, can't go anywhere. Or I have social anxiety. And those are not, disabilities. They're things I know about myself so that I can take steps to overcome those things. Like if I didn't have arms and I was drinking, I would find a way to drink,
Right.
So, but self-care now looks like I got to answer my phone. I got to be where I say I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I have to have that accountability. And, cause if I don't, I can't enjoy the time when it's quiet anyway, I got to spend time with my kids and whatever. Of course, there's times when I go in my sauna and blast 9-inch nails. That makes me feel sleepy. So,
You have a sauna?
yeah,
Oh. In
That's
your
cool.
house?
yeah,
Oh.
Wow, that's cool.
I know. I made it.
It's not like just like a hot shower?
No, like rocks and everything, steam.
That's crazy. Did Matt build it?
No, no, I got it. I put it together.
You did?
Yeah,
Oh. Like real rocks? And
yeah.
well, I suppose rocks aren't hard to come by.
No,
Okay.
they get hot and then steamy and
So what do you like put wood in there and like
no, it's
start it
electric.
on fire?
No, it's just a 110. You plug it in.
Oh.
Some lady in a different tax bracket than me didn't like how it looked in her place, so I got it pretty cheap.
The electric or like
Yeah, it's
you
a
bought the
sauna.
entire room and then moved it to your house?
Well, what do I compare it to? It's like a closet kind of, or a porta potty, like twice as big as a porta potty.
Oh.
And it just plugs into the wall and it heats up, and then if you want steam, you have steam, but it gets up to like 170. So
Oh, snap.
yeah,
That's cool.
You do this often?
yeah,
Oh.
it's winter.
Yeah.
Oh,
Is
so-
it outside?
No,
Oh.
but that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It might be a little
Yeah,
harder
no,
to
it's in
plug
my
it in,
closet.
though. Yeah. So you-
Anyways, so that's something to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in this.
That's really cool.
Well, let's go to my house after this.
I've only known one other person that had a sauna in their house, and they had it built when they built their house. So it was like, oh, that makes sense. I mean, if you have the...
Were they a big deal?
Well, I mean, define
Oh,
big deal.
all right, fine.
Anyway, all right. I got the Facebook Live up.
Sweet. There we
It
go.
just kept stopping out. It would go like 3, 2, 1,
And then not start.
and then just stare.
Yeah.
So anyway, what were we talking about?
Talking about self-care and self-love.
Oh,
So starting with
saunas
self-care.
and-
Yeah, I just said stuff that would change your life, but I guess you missed it.
Yeah, just dropping pearls. We talked about this kind of like, because really what self-care and self-love is coping, right? I in my opinion, is for people like us, I think, because that's the only time it's really ever talked about is when you're getting overwhelmed, right? Or things are going sideways. Like, at least in my life, that's when I talk about it, because guys aren't really prone to talking about self-care and self-love. It's probably more along the lines of like, I feel like I need to provide more, whether it's financial or, last night I went to the grocery store and I was like, this is the modern day hunting. Like going to the grocery store and buying food and then bringing it home is like, imagine like where we'd be at today if we had to like go out and get our own food, and like get a deer, bring it back to the house and do all the processing of like being able to feed the family. Like, I never would have made it back in the day. I would have enjoyed going out and getting the deer, and then I would have brought it home and been like, well,
now what?
No, but my like my uncles and stuff, they love doing that stuff. They like hanging the deer and like cut, whatever. And I watched I was like, no, that's not for me. And so I would have not fended well back then. I saw this comedian the other day. He was like, imagine millennials in the Vietnam War, like they would, or in the Civil War, been like, Confederate selfie, like, or there's too much pollen out there, or whatever. Like, I'm a millennial, so I can make fun of millennials. So if there's people out there that are getting weird about it.
Elder millennial, for those not on Facebook Live.
I'm an elder millennial. I'm at the cutoff, 81. 81 is the beginning of, or the end of millennials, from what Google says. So I'm like I'm a hybrid between two generations. I know how tech works and I work hard. So.
Oh yeah, it's a good combo.
Yeah.
I like how you like tied that in, like just circle that out. Like, I'm an elder millennial.
But
It's
anyway,
cool.
like, so last night in relapse prevention, we were just talking about, when does it feel normal? Like, when do I get to start feeling normal? Because it's like, if I'm not drinking, I'm just filled with anxiety all the time. And it's not even like a self-care, self-love thing so much, because I'm not really, I mean, and maybe some people, they just get really right into work when they sober up, or they get really into working out or whatever. They always find this one thing where it's just like, this is the thing.
It's the next shiny thing.
It's the next shiny thing. That's all it is. Like, I think working out's important for some people. I get a lot more self-care out of like spending time with someone I don't know, that's like, well, like, for example, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, right? Like, when Bill Wilson showed up there to meet Dr. Bob, like, Bob had heard it all, right? Like, he was pretty spent on the whole people wanting him to get sober, right? Like, it was I mean, in modern day times, which that's so weird to say compared to like that time, but it would be probation officers and psychologists and judges and all the people who are getting super involved with, like, they trying to get people sober, but they're just punishing them in a sense, or guilt tripping them or shaming them. There's no real message of like hope or help or whatever. And so then when he got there, he was like, Bill, you got like 15 minutes, bro. I've heard it all. I've done it all. And Bill was like, totally shifted the conversation. He was like, I'm not here for you. I'm here for me. And that intrigued Bob, and he's been sober ever since.
Yeah.
So it was Bill's self-care was other care.
Yeah.
But in a way, not like going and like doing everything for them or anything like that, but just going and like connecting.
Yeah.
I think community is self-care.
Yeah. It has to be in addiction. It has to be, because me thinking more about me is only going to make this worse. And so to just like find a place where you can do a random act of kindness. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but I remember first going to meetings and talking with my sponsor about, my finances are all screwed up. I'm broke. I, don't know what to do. And then she'd say, well, go shake hands. And I'd think, well, you didn't hear me. My finances. Am I asking these people for money while I shake hands or what? Anyway, but all of those things, all of the big traumas and all of the things, you can't fix all of that right away. But you have to connect with people. And I think if you're not willing to be uncomfortable, you're not going to get better, because it's going to be uncomfortable, because you have to, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not getting better. And I think that's, flipped into my whole life when, if anybody's ever like, we should go, and like my husband signed me up to chaperone a trip to Florida with like 150 band and choir kids.
Oh,
and then
that's cool.
He had to work and got sick. So anyway, but I was so uncomfortable. I felt like I was 13 again. I'm like, I don't know who to talk to. This is going to be awful. And I ended up making two of the best friends that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I sat with these two ladies on the plane that were just as inappropriate as me. And I thought, we can hang. This will be awesome. But I just have to be willing to do that, or you just don't get better,
I think particularly, I said it right.
Yep.
I struggle with long words. I think for addicts and alcoholics, or those who struggle with mental health or whatever, and I think mental health, it's really, really missing out with people who have a mental health diagnosis that may not be an addict or an alcoholic. There's not a lot of like recovery assets or resources in the community as much as there is for people who are able to go to 12-step meetings or smart recovery or, the church or whatever. But particularly with us, it's like, it's nice to go out and do random, nice things for like complete strangers and stuff. And I think there's some self-worth that comes from that and self-care, but I get a way more out of like being, having purpose along with it. Right. So like, finding people who are just like me that struggle with alcoholism and being, of service to them, or random acts of kindness for them or whatever. There's purpose behind it. 'Cause I know what to say. Right. Like it's not just like kindness. It's like purpose-driven kindness, right. But in a selfish way, because I'm doing it because there's something I get out of it for me, whether it's mentally or spiritually or something like that. I can do that for old ladies to cross the street or whatever, like it's not really my purpose though. That's more of a byproduct of my purpose. Jerk, I'm just not being a jerk. Or seeing a guy that's, on the street with a cup or something like that, giving him, some cash or, take him out to eat or something like that. I mean, he probably is a good chance addict or alcoholic or has some kind of diagnosis, but I just get more out of that than, I went to the psych ward I've been there for both myself and, to go help others or whatever. But like when I was like 3 months sober, there was nobody taking, the recovery meeting into the psych ward anymore. And they asked me if I wanted to do it. And I was like, I'm like 3 months sober. I don't even know how I'm going to get here, but I just said, yeah. And I did it. And I did it for 18 months and nobody stayed sober. And I was like, it makes you feel like you're like, what really is my purpose? And I talked to, my sponsor about it, and I was just like, nobody's staying sober. It's pointless. Maybe I'm just not the guy to do this, because I was like outcome-based service, and the outcome I was looking for was like the ego outcome of like being able to say I sobered people up or whatever. And I was like, nobody's staying sober. And then he was like, yeah, but you are. And that shift happened. Like I stayed here long enough for me to realize that like it works. Right. And ever since then, I wouldn't say I've never cared if people have gotten sober, but I've never cared about the outcome as much as the effort put into it for myself. Right. And ever since then I've stayed sober, I don't think I could have done that if I thought my purpose was just to walk old ladies across the street.
Yeah, no.
Like, and stand by the curb and just wait.
Yeah, that's nice, but boring.
Not going to get much out of it. I'm glad your day's better and you didn't get hit by a car. You know.
If Ricky was with, we could put bets on if they make it.
They'd probably not let him help. They'd be, but there's just more purpose. And I think as long as you have a community and you have purpose and you have effort, that's probably the magic sauce right there. Mm-hmm. Because it's hard to, like, my thing is, like, effort, attitude, and trust. But, I mean, a lot of times, like, you're just kind of winging it on, like, helping people or whatever. And, yeah. Do you trust me? Like, trust really isn't a factor as much as it's, like, probably faith. Mm-hmm. Like, faith in the process of, like, just being helpful.
Yeah, I have faith in you, but I'm still going to hang on to my purse.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, if you're just tuning in, this is KRFF 95.9 LPFM. This is F5 Recovery Radio. We'll, of course, thank the F5 Project for being our sponsor and helping us be able to have this show. It's super awesome to be able to talk about recovery on the radio, which is really cool. So today's topic, we're talking about self-care and self-love. This is One Pretty Ricky, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Kirsten Huvenen and Adam Martin. So question for you both. I want to kind of transition.
That's what we're going to call it.
Ooh, the
Can't
nicknames.
We just go with town?
I think we should call you Hoovadoose.
Hoovadoose?
That's horrifying. I hate. That's really awful.
That's the gang in California.
No, I don't.
Start calling her Tookie.
Hoovadoose? Like vacuum a turd?
No.
I never thought
I never thought of that either.
Yeah.
No.
Apparently Scott College is here with dad jokes. So. Hey, what do you say to the guy that invented the number 0? Absolutely nothing.
No, it's supposed to be thanks for nothing.
What?
There's supposed to be thanks for nothing.
Oh, yeah, that would have been better.
Okay. You're a mom. Anyway.
Yeah.
That was for Scott. That's a shout out to Scott.
Yeah.
Shout out Scott
I like
College.
his jokes.
Mm-hmm.
I've been telling this one that nobody's been able to get until I explain it, and it's horrifying to me that I have to explain it. Batman and Robin are stranded on the side of the road, and Robin says the Batmobile won't start, and Batman says, "Did you charge the battery?" And he said, "What's the Terry?"
Well,
battery.
Oh.
Battery.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense why you have to explain it.
Yeah. Everybody.
Yeah.
Lame. I got it right away, but I'm a Batman fan, so I got it. Like
battery.
You know, he's not
like
the
bat
coolest.
phone,
Yeah.
Batmobile,
Yeah.
bat signal,
Yeah.
battery.
Mm-hmm. The more you say it, the more I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for you guys on Facebook Live, you got it. So go on with your show, Ricky.
Yeah.
Well, the next question for talking about self-care and self-love is setting boundaries a type of self-care and self-love? Because you guys both have talked about like your purpose and helping other people and whether they find recovery or not, a lot of that. So then is there too much help? And then, is it taking away from being able to provide love for yourself in your own stories? Like, is it like, all right, I need to set this, I want to help this lady across the street, but I'm not going to help 5 ladies across the street, right? Like setting a boundary, like, okay, I can only
boundaries.
Do
so much. Is that
and that's
part of your self-care?
I'm
huge.
the worst
It's
person
good.
to ask about boundaries.
Well, that's why we talk about it. Yeah.
I think it's hard, especially if you have like somebody who's chemically dependent or addicted to gambling or whatever in your life. But the healthy boundaries make it so that you can be happy no matter what they decide to do. Because really, ultimately, if their journey is to fall flat on their face, then I have to respect that and, be kind anyway. And I think that I'm sure Sarah will hate this, but when Sarah lived with us, and she struggled with staying sober for a while there, and I think because we had been in the program and because we had people go before us that had already done this, we were able to say, like, I can love you completely and still have healthy boundaries. Like, don't bring anything here, but if you need a place to crash, you're always welcome here. I won't ask questions. I just want you to be safe. And whenever you decide to be back here, I love you no matter what, but I can't take any of the things that they do personal, and I have to still enjoy my life, So you can love someone unconditionally and say no. I think once you have kids, you figure that out.
Yeah, it's really hard for families to understand that.
Yeah.
Like the whole concept of just letting people be, right? Encouraging good behavior, ignoring the negative behavior.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's just as much probably hurt and trauma and sickness, right, for a loved one when they don't even have to do anything.
Yeah.
They just have to be in that journey. And it's I probably get more phone calls in some days, from family members who are struggling with their loved one's addiction or incarceration or mental health or whatever. And usually it's family members that, want them to be better. And so that they love them so much that they are almost to the point where they're willing to do absolutely everything for them so that they almost don't have to travel the journey, right? Or they just have such low expectations that it creates a really high level of judgment.
Yeah.
Right? So the judgment increases.
Okay.
The lower the expectation is. Right. So when they don't hit that expectation, they're actually way more punitive than they would have been with a normal expectation. So I usually just tell family members to just lose all expectations, or have, some, if you come to the house, you got to be a family member. Right.
Yeah.
So if you come here and you're being toxic and you're being mean and you're yelling at people, you got to go.
Yeah.
Right. And not in a judgmental way. Just say it's just not healthy for the family for you to be here right now. Come back when you want to treat people with respect. And that is really hard for family members to do, to just tell people to just leave.
Right.
And I've been asked many times to do interventions, which I think screw that show. That wrecked a lot of things. But I won't do that. I'll talk with the person who's struggling one-on-one. I'll talk with the family one-on-one. But getting together to shame someone into getting better from an illness, it'd be just it's just, it's so heartbreaking.
Well, the perfect analogy would be let's say it happened to Ricky, right? But the intervention happened with the people who are gambling. Right. They're sitting there, making a bet, right, and saying, or we're at the bar and everyone's having drinks and they're just like, Adam, you're an alcoholic, right? Why are you
never
here?
Come back,
Or when people are getting drunk and they're like, I respect you for not drinking. There's just, it's a form of hypocrisy. Do what I say and not what I do.
Right.
But it's different because they view you different, right? You're an alcoholic. I'm not an alcoholic, so I can drink, right? And nobody's trying to make them stop drinking by any means, but they're just not the right people to have that kind of intervention, right? An intervention, in my opinion, would look like me and Kirsten sitting in a room just telling our stories and making it nothing about them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why people respond to us so much better than a family member who's having a drink telling them to stop drinking.
Right.
Right. And even though they're not drinking right at that moment, that's what that guy sees.
Right.
He's like, you drink? Why? Well, because when you drink, you go to jail.
Right.
Right. And we're like, well, I don't want to. It's a different conversation. So, family members.
And they have to find how to be healthy that's not contingent upon someone else's behavior. You have to be healthy no matter what someone else does, because you can't control that.
Right.
And so to work on those healthy boundaries and there's Al-Anon, there's just so much help out there if you're willing to be uncomfortable and willing to take suggestions you don't necessarily believe in, what do you got to lose, really?
Yeah. The hard part is that they're emotionally connected, right?
Yeah,
so it's
for sure.
prime example is when my son got sober, right? I knew in my head, I was like, I can't be that guy. I can't be the guy that's telling him what, I can tell him what recovery is, but I can't be the guy who's like giving him suggestions and guidance and stuff like that. Sometimes on the fly, he'll ask me my opinion on, or whatever, but, outside of that, I'm not giving him like his spiritual direction or his recovery direction, because when I do, because he's my son and I'm emotionally connected to him, I put a level of expectation on it to the point where I'm like, every time I see him, now we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Right? Did you go to the meeting? Did you get a sponsor? Are you practicing, or whatever? Why aren't you doing it? Where, a guy that I'm not emotionally connected to, someone who asked me to just be that guy in their life, we'll have that conversation, and we probably won't talk about it again until he brings it up.
Right.
And so I'm not involved. Right. That's the beauty of mentorship and peer support and whatever, is you can have like a really good conversation with someone about change without expectations, where family members are incapable of doing it. It is 100% incapable, and they almost make it worse. They do. I'm not going to say almost. They make it worse for someone's recovery when they get involved with their recovery.
Because they're scared and desperate, and they think if they make it punitive, it will work better. But I think that addiction has been treated exactly the wrong way for years and years, and punishing people with addictions and isolating them it just perpetuates the problem. And the answer is connection. Like quit. I had to quit using I have social anxiety, I'm an introvert. I had to quit using that as my excuse to not be involved. Because, I probably do have those things, but one of the most common symptoms of addiction is social anxiety. You know what I mean? So we're all in the same sinking ship, and just to be open to that. And interesting fact, maybe it's a fact, maybe I'm making it up. I don't know. But Portugal, like 15 years ago they decriminalized all drugs from weed to crack, and since then, they have had like half the deaths from overdose. They have, you know what I mean? But they took the money they invested in the criminal part of it and put it in connecting. Like they'd pay a business this person's wage for a year, so they could get. Anyway, it's just like what a novel idea, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Well, what was it? 5 years ago, the Department of Corrections in North Dakota had $8 million that they reallocated to human services to create a program, Free Through Recovery, and basically the whole goal of it was, this was a very simple version of what Portugal did, right? One program. Portugal completely forklifted a whole new system where they made sure that police understood, the courts understood, like this is what we're doing, we're not punishing anymore, right? And then so that was different. So on our side, we're with a very simple program, we still had to deal with all the collateral damages that were going on in the other systems while we were trying to do this. But even in that, 75% of like the 1,200 people that have been referred to us have stayed out of jail. Yeah. Right. I'm not saying that 75% of them stayed sober. Right. Right. But 75% of the people that encountered us, one, did not go back to prison in the last 5 years. And then all had an increase of quality for housing, recovery, and employment, and all stayed law-abiding. Yeah. Right. And so this 75% is what is the national trend of people going back to prison is 75%, right? So now we just took that 75%, right, and made 75% of that successful. Yeah.
And that's incredible. That's crazy. You do have like this wraparound. I love what you've done with that, because it's not about being punitive. It's about like helping them with this illness and through all of and just bettering their life with no not like how many days do you have, how many, nothing. There is no goal specific. It's just, are you happier? Are things better? That's success.
Without that type of program, right? That kind of wraparound peer support, care coordination, then you're just a treatment center, right? And I would love to see the recidivism results for treatment centers. You don't see them. They don't do them. There's a reason they don't do them, because if they came and said, 5% of the people that come to treatment don't come back to treatment, how many people will go to treatment? Right? This is the difference. This is why you don't see state-ran, you see them, but they're not like, normal, typical for-profit or even non-profit treatment centers or whatever, where they're not pushing out results. They'll send out a survey of like, this is how many people liked treatment. You know what I mean? But they'll never say this is how many people are in long-term recovery, but we will. Right? I'll say like 75% of the people we're working with are not going back to prison. Right? Which means that they're not being charged with drug crimes, and they're not being charged with, deal or whatever. Right? And their quality of life is going up, where treatment centers and prisons don't necessarily have to talk about quality of life. They're done after they walk out the door.
Yeah. And it's not a 28-day fix. It's just, it's so much bigger than that. And when I was...
If it was a 28-day fix, why don't we just put treatment in prison?
Yeah.
Then only put people in prison for 28 days.
Yeah.
We don't. We put them in there for a really long time because it is, if it is going to, there has to be time to heal.
Yeah.
And, and stuff. But prison's not the place to do that. If we could do that in treatment and put people in treatment for... God, I would hate being in treatment for like 3-4 years, but
it's got to be at least a year.
It's got to be something,
Yeah. And the guys that I was like, before insurance paid for people, the state, in Minnesota at least, would pay for someone to be in a halfway house. And the guys that I was able to keep for a year stayed sober. And then insurance took over, and it was like, okay, well, why do you need them if they actually have a job? And I'm like, because nothing else is put together. You know what I mean? It's just not stable. And it's just not ready, I'm
interested in having more, maybe later, of that conversation where the treatment center paid for the... Is that what you said? They paid for the halfway house?
Not the treatment center, the state. It was like, consolidated funding. But now it's all insurance. So.
Oh, okay. Because I just came across an outpatient place out in Minnesota that will give incentives for paying your program fees in a halfway house if you continue to do outpatient with them.
Wow.
I know. And then so I started looking into it and running the numbers. I was like, this is actually possible.
Yeah.
To do even a long-term outpatient treatment, right? I don't know how we would get insurance to pay for it after 12 weeks or whatever. But the incentive is that, like, if you were going to, what's outpatient? That's what, 9, 18, 20, 36 hours of treatment a month. And you go to all 36 hours, and then they pay up to $300 to $400 for your rent or your program fees. That's an incentive to continue to go.
Heck yeah.
Oh, man. I think we're going to do something like that.
Yeah. Otherwise, they end up paying for them again and again and again. It's just not,
Probably you go to insurance companies and be like, listen, we need to build this because you will spend less money on doing insurance, reimbursements for outpatient and inpatient care later if we can get them, to not have to worry about paying their rent while they're going. 36 hours, that's a part-time job.
Yeah, it is.
Going to outpatient treatment. And then, and I remember the times when they were like, you need to go to outpatient treatment. I'm like, I got to work. Right? Like, I have to pay child support. And they're like, well, you can get a full-time job, and then go to outpatient. So we're talking, I'm working 160 hours a month. And we just threw 40 hours on top of that. Right? Like, when do I get to be, like, when's the self-care? Well, treatment is self-care. I'm not going to see any of these people after I'm done. Right. You know what I mean? And so then they spend most of their time in treatment just telling you to go to AA.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's
you need to get connected in the community. And I'm like, then why am I here? Well, you need to learn how to be in recovery. Well, then why should I go there? Well, because that is recovery. Then why can't I just go there? It's like, there's just a ton of, if you don't have peer supports with your treatment center, like a very robust care coordinators and peer supports and stuff, then you're just another wheel in the system. That's just like, this is why you see insane amount of caseloads.
Yeah.
Where LACs at treatment centers have a caseload of like 100 people. Like, how are you providing care for people who are doing 40 hours? I mean, this is just outpatient.
Yeah.
40 hours of care,
You're doing 40 hours of paperwork.
Yeah, no doubt. I feel for LACs. I'm not one, but I've seen, like, since we started the treatment center, the amount of paperwork and notes and insurance, like all that stuff. I'm just like, holy God, I couldn't imagine. Like, and then there's just me being a peer support, and I just have very little paperwork, and I get to really have quality relationships with people in treatment.
Yeah.
We should
The
equal
paperwork
that.
is the down. I mean, it's just like, I get why it's necessary, but yeah, you're missing that connection,
Yep.
And yeah, you're trying to word it so that insurance will keep paying for it. It's just, it shouldn't be that difficult, Yeah.
Well, with that, I'm going to take a quick little plug break. And so we want to thank Flatline Guitar, Flatline Guitar Underwriting for providing some awesome underwriting for our programming here on KRFFL PFM Radio Free Fargo. The Flatline Guitar is your full-service guitar shop and exclusive dealer for Yamaha, Taylor, Paul Reed Smith guitars, and other brands. They sell guitars on consignment, they take trade-ins, and have a full-service on-site repair center. Check out Flatline Guitar and Luthery on Facebook, or you can visit them in person at 1450 25th Street South in Fargo. Their hours are Monday through Friday, 10 to 6, or, of course, for Adam, Saturdays, 10 to 5, closed on Sundays. It's just been this thing I've been doing since the show started. There's always, whenever there's anything plugged on Saturdays, for Adam specifically.
Oh,
Yeah,
I don't do anything on the weekend. I hang out with the kids.
I know. Because you do so much during the week.
Yeah.
That's why they have
Yeah,
Saturdays
thank you,
available.
Ricky.
Yes, I acknowledge. And if you're just tuning in, this is F5 Recovery Radio here on KRFF 95.9 LPFM. This is One Pretty Ricky. We have Kirsten Hoovenen and Adam Martin in the studio. Our co-host, super excited, talking about self-care and self-love today on today's show. It's been really good information and a lot of being able to share, and kind of, it's always good to like get to know my co-host a little bit more. But so we have another 20-ish minutes or so I want to jump into one more question, and this one's probably gonna be a little bit deeper, but figured, why not close it out with something dope and deep. So looking at and thinking about your self-care and your self-love, how does that relate, whether it's you personally or just people that you maybe connect with or sponsorship in the community? What is that spiritual, aspect of your self-care and self-love like? Like for me personally, obviously or not obviously because you guys don't know, but I go to church. I volunteer. I do a lot of different things at my church and in a variety of different capacities because it helps me just kind of stay connected to myself, but to my higher power. And so shout out Prairie Heights. Love that church. And it's been just really good to be able to like put myself into a service in a different way than just helping specific people who might need help with gambling, but like spiritually, helps me spiritually, helps other people spiritually being able to do that. But what does your self-care or self-love look like?
I think the people at Prairie Heights think Ricky started F5 too. Because I'll go there and they'll be like, hi, what's your name? I'm like, I'm Adam. They're like, what do you do? I was like, I work at F5. I was like, oh, you work for Ricky? And it's like, sure.
Sure, I do.
Yeah.
Well played, Ricky. Well played.
I think it's a journey. It's a journey, man. Because I've went through I think the spirituality aspect was the toughest for me, like because it was
really
it was the toughest because it was I grew up not really knowing much, and then the only time I ever went to church or was if my grandma was around or something and she's like, we're going to church, and I'm and so my grandma in Breckenridge, we were going to the Catholic church, and I was like, this is weird. Like, we're just sitting here, and then I go with my grandma in Alabama, we go to a Southern Baptist church, and they're like yelling, amen. And the preacher's like doing this like fire and brimstone, so I was just like really confused, like how, the different people were talking about God differently, so I just really struggled with the whole, like, I guess, logic of it, right? Because it's fun. It's funny. The only time I ever talk about logic is when we talk about spirituality. Like, nothing else. Logically, I'm an alcoholic, but and so I don't know. I struggled with it, and then I got really deep into it for a while, and I actually went to school to like pursue getting my MDiv and like becoming a pastor, right? And
What's an MDiv?
A master's in divinity.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, they have a whole,
That's
program.
awesome.
It was a
Masters in divinity.
Yeah, and I would like do my homework and stuff, and it would be like, my professor would be like, you have really great content. Your grammar is horrible. It's like, I don't know what you're saying. I understand. I see all the words. I understand the words, but I don't understand how you put them together, And so, but and then I got like, I was drinking and getting religious, and like, that was like spending more people to, you're going to go to hell, and like, and there's like evidence on Facebook of me doing this, I've had to like, every time memories pop up, I'm like, delete.
Yeah.
And so I don't know now, like, it's kind of like when I got sober, I was just like, man, I'm done. Like, I'm done trying to figure out who you are. Right. I'm done trying to, be right. Mm-hmm. And, you're big enough that you'll lead me to wherever it is that I'm supposed to be. And, so I don't spend a ton of time praying for request. And, I really believe that if he is as big as everyone says, then he knows, like, then he will, there's things in front of me that I'm supposed to do. Okay. It became more about what I'm supposed to do rather than who he is, right. And so I particularly love the story of Jesus. Mm-hmm. I think he is the greatest social reformer, criminal justice reformer of all time. The fact that they were stoning a woman for being a prostitute, right? And then he stood in front of them and just called them on their crap and was like, let the first person who has not sinned cast the first stone. And then they just all drop their rocks and walk away. And then he turned to her and he's like, now go sin no more. And it was like, he held he didn't care who you were, the attorney general, right? Or, the guy on the street. Like, right. He treated everybody the same. So it was like, super cool. And he didn't spend a lot of time talking about the things that our politicians talk about on like, law, was meant to be observed and to, it was a journey. It was like meant to be a journey, like the law, like no one, and then they turned it into penalties and punishments, and then they put rules on top of them, and we just kind of we just made it corporate. Yeah. So I don't know. I take kind of like what it says in the Big Book with Bill Wilson. He's like, to Christ I conceded a great man, not too closely followed by those who claimed him. And I took what I could, and it disregarded the rest. So it was like the things that were really hard for me. I was just like, I'm just not there yet to like really understand that. Okay. And so I look at him as a criminal justice reformer, and I try to like be like that. Yeah. So
you remind me of Jesus. Nice to whores, and usually followed by 12 rejects.
Wow. Oh. She can say that. Holy cow.
Yeah. I was always interested in your interest in religion, just because it was such a turnoff when I first came. Like, the fact that they even said God was just, you know what I mean? And something like, it was just like so, like, why do they have to be so hateful? And but that's like Old Testament, like burning bush, but there's antibiotics for that, all that stuff. So, but once you get, because I had such an adverse reaction, it was something in me, you know what I mean? I should have been able to just be like, well, it is what it is. That's cool. I'm going to find my path. So it took me 20 years to even come to a place where I was comfortable with a spiritual connection. And that's still really got nothing to do with, it's just energetic, and it's just be a good person, you know what I mean? And let things happen, and things happen, you know.
Right.
So I still don't know exactly what it is, but I know that I feel most spiritually connected when I'm talking with someone else, you know, like Adam was saying, like talking with someone on a meaningful level. And that's where I see, you know, you see that spirit or whatever.
Yeah, you don't see a lot. I mean, there are some recovery groups that really emphasize it, right? And almost so much that they've kind of created their own sect, right? Like whether it's like recovery worship or, you know, whatever, right? But for the most part, I think that the three things that recovery groups did was they stayed out of politics, right? They created like traditions for it. Like, you know, I have no opinion on outside issues. And then the higher power aspect where it was like, we have no monopoly here on this. Like you can believe whatever you want. We're just here for recovery. And then the third one was like that, you know, staying anonymous, you know, like those three are powerful, right? In the sense of like, it's not about me when I'm here, you know, and I have no opinion on anything that you believe. Like you can believe what you want to believe, right? And then if you ask me for my opinion, that's, you know, different. But I'm not going into meetings and talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going in there and talking about what I do in the professional world and I'm not making it about me. Like that's kind of the general consensus of people in recovery and why I think it makes it so easy for people to like be there. Because once it becomes politics or a certain religious belief and you're the guy that needs to talk about it, then you're not going to, it breaks.
Right. Well, then I think it just, because then so when I think of like spirituality and the spirit and all of that, it just, because it doesn't seem attainable, because it does seem far out there, it's like, okay, this is something I can continue to always pursue, always, you know, seek after. And it could be because I was raised, you know, Pentecostal, like it was ingrained. Like it was like.
Your family's Pentecostal?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yep. My dad was
how's that different?
They speak in tongues.
Speaking tongues.
Ooh.
They get drunk on the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Literally. Like you just see people
so
just laid out.
Are they like charismatic Pentecostals?
Yep.
Like charismaniac?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It was, very small church, but it was.
Never been to
never.
I mean, there's no real term charismaniac. It's just, it's a term that I like people who are extremely Pentecostal, like, you know, they think that, like proof of being in some circles, they think proof of being saved is that you speak in tongues. Right. And
cool.
So here, listen, I went to a Pentecostal church and they were like, you know, they brought this speaker in, and this is a great story because I am so dumbfounded by this moment. But he was like, they're like, everybody stand up, and I was like, oh, participation, and and so then I stand up, and he just starts speaking in tongues, right? And then he looks at it, he's like, we're gonna find what everybody's spiritual gift is today, and I was like, ooh, money. And they're like, that's not what spiritual gifts are. And so they're like, come around, and he starts speaking in tongues, and then he like tap you on your forehead, and then you just like fall over, and then when you like came back up, you'd know what your gift is, whether it's like speaking in tongues, interpretation of tongues, or music or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so they get, you know, I'm in this line, and they're like, he's like tapping all these people on the forehead, and they're all falling over, and then they're like speaking in tongues. I was like, oh my goodness. And so then he comes to me, and I'm a Baptist, okay? And so like I don't necessarily believe in what they're doing or whatever. Today I'm like, man, who knows, right? Like anything's possible. Yeah. And he comes up to me and starts speaking in tongues, and then he like taps me on the head, and I don't fall down, right? And and then he like looked at me, and then he like he put his fingers on my head, and he started like pushing me backward, and I started like moving forward, and it was just like this battle of like good and evil happening right at this moment. Finally he was just like, all right, and then he just like moved on, and I was like, that's it, like we're not gonna go there. But right before that, before I knew this was going to happen, the guy like started speaking, and then he started speaking in tongues, and then everybody got up, right? And so I'm like standing up, and then he just yells, loose, right? And everyone fell down except for me. right? And I look around, and I was like, I'm new. And I like got down on the ground, and I was like, and I looked over at the guy, and I was like, what do we do? And he's like, just go with it, bro. And I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But I
that's
walked
cool.
away from that not judging it, but just wishing that I was so faithful.
Yeah.
Like I could just like be okay with like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I have a fond respect for Pentecostals for a couple reasons. They're so faithful that even if like the ones I've talked to, even if they have a hard time believing what's happening, they still participate in it. And then the other thing is like them going out and preaching the gospel and like trying to like get people to come to church with them and stuff. Evangelism, by far, there's not another religion in the world that does it as good as them. Yeah. Like so much faith. Like it is crazy.
Like door to door?
No, not like Mormons or the Jehovah's Witnesses do that too. Yeah, like more Mormons, and that's really faithful too. Like being able to just go knock on strangers' doors and talk, and I'll invite them in and we'll talk or whatever. And but no, like going like open air preaching, like going out onto the streets and like preaching on the corners and stuff, and having like going into. When I was in Minneapolis and going to this church, we went to a mosque and we would walk through and just have, and Muslims will talk about Jesus all day long. They love talking about that stuff. And so it was like a whole new world for me. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's what really got me to go to want to be a pastor, was just like how faithful that group of people were. Yeah. So that's my story about the Pentecostals.
What's your gift, Ricky?
Yeah, that was, I think,
music. Is it music?
Music. But, or in the, I think it's 1 Corinthians that talks about, your gifts, the gifts of the Spirit. But the biggest one, I think, that every Pentecostal, or at least that you kind of develop, is the gift of faith. And so it was just this idea, obviously believing in something bigger than yourselves, that no matter what the situation is, that things will always turn around. And that was one of the biggest things that I'm so thankful for my mom having, because when I was like at the lowest point, just her faith just kind of helped kind of revive that everything is going to be okay. And I'm like, Ma, you don't know what's going on in my life and all these things. She's like, I don't care. Yeah. Like that gift of faith, it was just so significant. Her gift of faith was so significant that it was like, okay, well, now I have to believe that, okay, if you're clearly believing that things are going to be all right and that I'm going to be okay, and that I shouldn't just take my life and shouldn't just, just end it because I'm like, this is never going to get better. Like, if you believe that strongly, then I should just take that. And I think it just kind of was just this reminder and this trigger of like, oh yeah, I need to remember that everything is just going to sell itself out exactly as it goes. Yeah. And as long as I continue to just, just exist, things will be there, and I'll just find my path. And crazy enough, 5 years later, getting involved with F5, meeting Adam, all the things that just came just because I stayed alive, because Mom was like, it's going to be okay. It's just absolutely crazy. Yeah. I'm just so thankful.
And there's like different sects within the Pentecostal movement too, right? So then, because there's like some that are more conservative, where like if someone stands up in the middle of church and starts just randomly speaking in tongues, the pastor will stop them and say, is there anyone here that can interpret this message? Because there's a gift in interpretation.
No kidding.
And if there's no one, they'll make that person sit down. And then in some other church, a whole congregation will stand up and start speaking in tongues. Like it's
because kind of like I was speaking in English to you, and you understand what I'm saying. Having the gift of Holy Spirit, being able to have discernment to be able to say, or interpretation, to be able to say, okay, this is what this person like, and interpreting the same way if I was speaking Spanish and someone interpreted that in the English for you to understand, someone does that same thing.
Yeah. And then in some circles, they think it's like an angelic language, so it's not meant to be. It's not meant to be like a normal language or whatever, and like there's supposed to be a person there that can interpret it and like relay it to. And this all falls down to back in what book was it?
In Acts.
It wasn't in Acts, and because they like the Holy Spirit comes in, and they're all of a sudden there's like people standing up and speaking in tongues, and then people who didn't speak the same language as them could now understand the gospel because they were speaking it in their language.
That's bananas.
Yeah. I wish I could have been there. So
So we got 2 minutes. So you guys want to close out with anything? Want to share before we get out of
I
here?
want to show you what Kirsten gave me.
Yep.
She brought cookies. Well, if you're on the radio.
They look good.
So if you're on Facebook Live. And then she gave me this little... So she gave me cookies, and then she gave me this. Is like, I should not have to put that in my mouth. And it's a picture of me.
Yeah, should not have put that in your mouth.
Or
It's
I
mince.
should- Oh, it's mince.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and Ricky got one too. I don't even know if I can say this.
Right. Just show it, probably.
Becker mince. Where's yours? Oh, you didn't make one for
No,
yourself? You just
I
wanted to
don't
make
need-
fun of us?
I'm too classy.
Yeah. All right. So we'll end with, the lessons today that we learned is that if your family and you want to support your one who's incarcerated or dealing with addiction or mental health, help them get connected to people that have experience in it. Try not to shame them. Try to ignore the negative behavior. Be graceful.
And there's help for you, too.
And there's help for you, too. You can come to the Ridge on Wednesdays, I believe, and do family group. But just get connected at F5 or the Ridge. Giving Hearts Day is tomorrow. Remember, I don't know if Radio Free Fargo are they a participant? Remember Radio Free Fargo for Giving Hearts Day, F5 Project, and all the other nonprofits tomorrow.
And tune in next week when this is F5 Recovery Radio. We're going to be talking about relationships and family. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is One Pretty Ricky. I'm joined with Kirsten Huvenen, Adam Martin. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place. See you then.